Game development is a tricky business. Not every idea or concept made by the developers makes its way into the final game, and when it does, it's probably in a form that was pretty different to what the developers pictured in their brain. So that's what I wanted to cover in this video: unused and scrapped video game content. I love this stuff. Finding something left over in a video game's files that the developers either didn't implement or just forgot to remove is always fascinating to me, and it makes you wonder what its purpose was. Whether it be a missing sprite, sound file, or model, I'm sure every game has something left over in those blocks and blocks of code that isn't called in the final game. But what about Roblox games in particular? Well, it's a bit different if you think about it, because Roblox games usually get constant updates. Not to mention they aren't open source for scavengers to find the good stuff. But in this video, we're going to be looking at a particular Roblox game that people have actually managed to get their greasy hands on. Yeah, Piggy! Definitely one of my favourite Roblox games of all time, and one that I know the most about. I mean, if you take a horror game about Peppa Pig that inspires someone to make an iceberg list with over 500 entries, you've definitely done something right. Now before we do get into this video, I need to make a few disclaimers. What exactly classifies as unused or scrapped content? While I like to think of unused content as something left over in their game's files that is never called in the final game for whatever reason. It was probably planned by the developers at one point, then was forgotten about or replaced. It was never intended to see the light of day, at least in its current state. The next disclaimer is that I won't be covering unobtainable content. Yeah, sure, the quest or event to get them might have been removed from the game, but the appropriate skin or trap hasn't, so I wouldn't really class them as removed. Also, in addition to unused content, we're also going to be covering planned and changed features, as some of them you might not know about. Now, due to Roblox Piggy still updating, some stuff mentioned in this video may return to the game in the future, so please keep that in mind. Also, I'm not really sure how people were able to find this stuff, as I'm no expert on developing, but I'll leave a few references and links to people who I got this information from in the description and at the end of the video. I didn't find this stuff, I'm just explaining it. Obviously I won't be talking about absolutely everything, just the stuff I found interesting. Yeah, that intro is way too long. Anyway, let's start with some minor things that were altered in the final game, or at least in the current version that we're on. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard of this first one, as it's pretty famous, but originally found in Chapter 1 of Book 1 would be several Peppa Pig pictures scattered around the map. Some of them crossed out for whatever reason. Obviously they were removed for copyright reasons, as the game's developer, Minitoon, might have realised the Peppa Pig company weren't too fond of their characters being turned into infected zombies. Yeah, understandable. Another one of these posters could originally be found in Chapter 3, where a missing George Pig poster was likely removed for the same reasons. Strangely enough, the poster reads that George apparently has red eyes when infected, which is something he lacks in what I would assume to be his corresponding skin, the little brother. Another thing to note here is the contact number. Yeah, just a load of 6s. Maybe it's the same number NA Productions called when he made his Piggy 3 AM video. I doubt it. All jokes aside, it's already interesting to see that Minitoon planned on having George infected from the beginning, which makes you wonder where the story could have gone on if he remained that way. The final thing to do with copyright here is actually something unused entirely. Now, for those of you who don't know, originally instead of being a standalone model, the Chapter 1 bot for Book 1 was supposed to be a still image of Peppa Pig. Well, I don't know how true this is, but apparently this is its supposed scrapped lost walking animation. Pretty cool if I do say so myself, but also really alien to what we have today. Alright, next up is some unused soundtracks, because who doesn't like music? And oh boy, there's a lot to cover here. The first unused soundtrack that we have is simply titled End Music. Now, in the interest of keeping this video monetized, I won't play it as the song was made by APM Music. And let's just say APM Music have a history of claiming videos, but I'll leave a link in the description if you want to listen to it for yourself. Judging by its name, it was more than likely going to have played at the end of a cutscene for one of the chapters. Now, I've seen a few people suggesting that this could have been used at the Chapter 12 ending cutscene, as their themes both seem sad and ominous and that they give off the same vibe. But to me, this fits more with Chapter 10, as firstly this track existed in the game files before Chapter 12, and secondly the fact that the starting cutscene music for Chapter 10 is called intro music, or at least that's what I've been told. Because their titles are similar, I think it's more than likely that this track was an early placeholder or concept for Chapter 10, but for whatever reason, MIDI-Toon decided to leave it in the game files untouched. The next soundtrack we're going to cover was actually used in the game at one point, titled Escaped, in which it would play when the player escaped from the house, station or gallery map. Due to the cutscenes being altered, this track now goes unused. Oh hey look, it's from Call of Duty Zombies! Alright, this next one is probably my favourite, and it's quite a bop, so here, have a listen. Now I know what you're thinking. Ash, no, this is definitely the theme that plays from the Book 1 Chapter 1 Piggy bot. Well, you're kind of right. The one that is used in the game is significantly slowed and pitched down, compared to this version, so I guess it kind of counts? The final interesting soundtrack from Piggy that goes unused is titled Potato Intro. Obviously this track was more than likely meant for the Book 1's main antagonist, Mr. P, but what scene it might have been used in is still a mystery. Again, I'll leave it in the description because APM music exists. And speaking of Mr. P, did you know that there are some unused animations of him walking towards something? Yeah, epic, I know. Since we see Mr. P in a non-cyborg form here, it's very likely that this animation was meant to be used at the end of Chapter 5, where we first meet Mr. P, or at the end of Chapter 6, where he ditches us to save his own skin. And while we're on the topic of animations, there are two more from the Book 2 Chapter 5 bot Alphys that go unused. These both show him entering and exiting the sewage water. For context, originally the sewer water in Chapter 5 was going to be much deeper, and the player probably wouldn't be able to walk through it, so instead the bot, Alphys, would be able to swim through the water to attack players. This was changed in the final version, where the water is much higher up, almost touching the main ground, and is probably why these animations go unused. As a whole, the new swimming mechanic probably didn't work with the map. And that's pretty much all of the interesting unused stuff I could find. Now on to part 2 of this video, the scrapped and changed content. Basically stuff planned for the game but was never put into the files. Starting off, we have this beautiful scrapped model of this supposed uninfected Mousy from Chapter 10. This image was shown to the world not too long before MIDI-Toon leaked her crawling animation, so I'm guessing the whole Mousy helper NPC was scrapped quite early on in development of Chapter 10, eventually being replaced with Georgie. And yes, I know, she does appear uninfected in the credits of Chapter 12, but still, she doesn't appear as a standalone character in the actual game. Why? Oh ho, and speaking of Mousy, we have this lovely scrapped redesign of her. Yeah, glad it was scrapped to be honest, the other one is so much better. And while we're here, I know everyone will count the old redesigns of the characters in Piggy technically scrapped, but since pretty much everyone knows about them, I'll really only be covering the ones that never made into the game at all. Starting off with the least interesting one, the teacher bot for the school map was originally going to have a turquoise dress. Yeah, that's it. Foxy's redesign was going to look completely different had the poll gone another way, glad it didn't. And Craxacord's model was originally not going to have a third eye, and his skin was going to be much darker compared to the final design by Tenuous Flea. He is literally bald! What were you thinking? Oh, and apparently Chapter 8 the Carnival was originally going to house a bigger role for Mr. P, but yeah, you never see him in the actual chapter apart from this mention of him, so that concept held up well. Parasy was originally going to be the bot for the distorted memory map, and Billy was going to be for Chapter 12. But yeah, I guess that's all the unused and scrapped content in Piggy that I could find. Kind of a short video, sorry. But like I said at the beginning, I only wanted to cover the unused content that I found interesting. And honestly, I'm not upset about that at all. So the lesson we learned today is that it's okay to laugh about what a developer planned for their game. Roblox or not, it's been interesting to see what stuff didn't make the final cut in Roblox Piggy. Yeah, sure, there was some other content that I didn't cover, but they're pretty minor things if I'm being honest, and I don't want to waste your precious time. However, I do want to thank the Piggy Wiki and Shelly for the information for this video. Without them, this video would not have been possible. I'll leave their socials in the description. Thanks, guys. Anyway, I'm gonna go for a walk now. Thanks for watching if you did actually make it to the end. I don't really know how to end one of these videos. Bye, I guess.